friends and family. There is always a bit of a delay now with our technology. So we appreciate your patience. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, I am joined with Shari from PUP Rehabilitation and Conditioning, and we are going to talk today about how to keep your sport dogs fit. So Shari, for those of our viewers who might not know you very well, you've been on here a few times now, but do you mind introducing yourself quickly? Awesome. So you are very familiar with our sport dogs from a personal standpoint and from a professional standpoint, which is awesome. And we've got lots of people tuning in now, which is awesome. We've got Anna and Linda. Oh, and they say they can't hear you. So give us just a minute. Let's see if we can fix this. One second here. Can everybody hear her now? Always, always. Oh, we can hear Chelsea. Uh, well, she says she can hear me. Anna, can you hear Shari? Let's give it just a minute here. Shari, sorry guys. Thanks for your patience. Not hear you. You plugged your headset into uh, your computer. Okay, so go ahead and swap it. You know what? Go ahead and unplug it completely, Shari. And can you talk for us now? Oh, now I can't hear you either. Okay, 1 second, guys. Okay, Shari, go ahead and talk for us again.
Can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you. Go ahead and plug your headset into your phone.
I can't do it into my phone. I can do it into my computer.
Oh, can you guys hear her now?
How about now? Nope.
Yep. And yes, I agree, Sarah Beth. We've been having connectivity issues, which is why we came on a bit late. You can sort of hear her.
How about if I bring my phone really close?
Anna says better.
Oh, so she could see my nose hairs. Gosh. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to hold my phone then the whole time.
Yeah, you will. Thank you guys for your patience and thank you for tuning in with us. We were having some connectivity issues from her laptop and it was blurrier than her phone. So we ended up going with her phone, but we've never done it this way before. So we're having some new things that we're having to work through. So Shari, now that they can hear you again, do you mind giving your intro one more time for us?
Sure. Sorry, guys. Thanks for hanging in there with us. So I'm Shari Sprague. I'm a physical therapist, and I have been for over 20 years. And over 12 years ago, I got certified in canine physical therapy, and I've been practicing canine rehabilitation ever since. I have my own business, PUP Rehabilitation and Conditioning, that I have had for 7 years now. 5 of those years were in South Florida, where I lived, and the last 2 years in Atlanta, Georgia. I also have a specialized certification in canine conditioning, and working with the performance and sport dogs are my bread and butter, and something I've been doing for a long time. I give a lot of conditioning seminars, and I compete in multiple venues, including agility, for the last 14 years.
Yep. So you have experience both professionally and personally with these sport dogs. So it's probably something that you hold near and dear. So right now, with our current situation, we are experiencing challenges with our sport dogs for a variety of reasons. One of which is normal, and we expected it, and it's this increase in temperature around us. So for some of these sports, for some of our sport dogs, this increase in temperature can create some problems with our ability to go out with our dogs. The other problem we're experiencing right now is this pandemic. It's causing us to have to be inside more than normal. It's closed or restricted our access to our normal outlets and training facilities with our dogs. And so everything is kind of slowing down a bit in terms of what we're able to do outside of the house. So with that in mind, Shari, what do you think that these changes will have on our sports dogs, and how do you think that we can kind of combat that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And what I'm hoping to help people grasp is that we have canine athletes. And no matter what the challenge, whether it's heat or this unique situation that we are all being put in, that we still treat them as true athletes, and knowing that any human athlete um, does continue with their fitness even in off seasons, which we could maybe consider what this time is right now is an off season, because none of our dogs are competing in anything active. But it actually then is a perfect time to be making sure we're doing good fitness programs with our dogs. I use my off season when I'm not competing to cross train my dogs in fitness and do a well-rounded conditioning program for them. But right now, because our dogs are off from competition, it's even more important, because otherwise, if they become couch potatoes and their muscles start to waste away and they get the muscle atrophy, they lose flexibility, and then all of a sudden competitions open up and boom, we show up, we are putting our dogs at an increased injury risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then we're expecting them to do something that normally they have a lot more conditioning for and are much more able to handle physically. Looks like we've got a bunch of people joining in. We've got Rosemary and Anna. We have Linda. Ziggy made it. Hello. So thank you guys for joining us. We were and kind of still are having some technical difficulties from Shari's end. So if it gets bad and you guys can't hear her, just let us know and we'll try to figure something out. So with our canine athletes right now, you know, having a good fitness program at home is really important for them, especially without that kind of out of the house normal practice time that we're getting. So with the kind of jumping back in to our sports programs as soon as things open back up, you mentioned that you are concerned about injury. So what can people be doing now in order to help reduce that risk of injury once we jump back into our sports?
Yeah, and I mean, I can relate in the sense of being indoors and with that heat coming up. I mentioned living in South Florida my whole life. It's like 90 degrees like 9 months out of the year.
Yeah.
And yuck, right. And all you want to do is stay indoors. So this is not too much different to my life in Florida. However, those who are not used to the heat or used to being indoors, it's time to start to be creative. I still managed to keep my dogs very fit when it was hot or when we were kind of confined to the home for whatever reason. The only thing that may get a little compromised would be their endurance or their aerobic capacity.
Mhm.
But there's still so many ways to challenge that system through things like swimming, or taking your dogs for jogs, walks, hikes, bike during cooler times of the day, or in shadier areas. So maybe if people can find, a trail, or part of their neighborhood that has more shade, or maybe just going for a shorter time. If your dog's you're used to doing an hour, but 30 minutes seems to be the capacity for the heat, then
Mhm.
you're still going to get that aerobic capacity and that endurance capacity. And then just knowing, okay, we had to bump it back a little bit over that off season time. So when it cools off or we return to our true sports, we'll have to ramp that up slower. I've even had people jog their dogs next to a golf cart, so that maybe they themselves have to exert the effort or they can't exert the effort.
Mhm.
Treadmills are certainly a great option. Human treadmills, if you have a small to medium size breed, is fine. But if you have a large breed, then you definitely need an actual treadmill that's made for dogs. And the reason
Right.
is the build isn't long enough on a human treadmill for a dog to get their full extended trot. So you do want the built to be at least 2 times the length of the dog so that they
Okay.
can get the extended trot. 2.5 times is more ideal. So, keeping that in mind, you can still do a lot in the sense of fitness for your dog, even in the heat and even staying home. Um, Ball play, frisbee, those are great options for cardio. If people are concerned about doing ball play for safety purposes,
Mhm.
they can certainly toss to a dead ball, or toss the ball, wait for
Right.
it to land, and then release the dog or let go of the dog's collar. Or another option for that would be to do restrained recalls. So
Mhm.
that's a fun obedience one. Work on the dog's name, work on maybe if the dog has to sit and
Yep.
wait and come to you. Or I even had an owner place their manners minder. So the piece of equipment that delivers treats through a remote control, if people aren't familiar with that.
Mhm.
She put it at the top of her hill on her property, and she'd release her dog to the manners minder. Dog would get the treat, and then the dog would run back. So the
That's
dog,
awesome.
in essence, I know, very clever. So if people can just start thinking out of the box of, okay, how can I still keep my dog fit and moving? Either because I can't move or I don't want to move or
Mhm.
it's hot for myself. There's still so many other methods that they can do.
Yeah. And as many of you guys know, I have 3 Alaskan Malamutes. And so exercising during the summer can be a big challenge. It's harder for them to get that heart rate elevated. We do hikes, we do swimming, but running is not really an option. And so we actually did end up purchasing a dog treadmill. And it was a big investment, but it really adds something new, something wonderful to our fitness program at home. And Ro actually has a nice question for us based on the treadmill. So I'd like to answer that real quick, Shari. She says, do you recommend a trot on a treadmill over running?
That is such a great question, Ro. Thanks for asking it. The answer to that is yes. And the reason, because a treadmill is not a normal surface for a dog. First off, it moves. It also has a lot of forgiveness to it. And so it really doesn't make for a normal gait. So it is certainly better to keep them at a trot. The other reason I answer yes to that is a trot in and of itself is the most symmetrical gait. So it actually works. And when I say the most symmetrical gait, I mean it actually works the left side versus the right side equally. It is the most symmetrical over a walk or a canter or a full out gallop. So
Mhm.
I definitely, and I also have a dog For those who don't know, I have 3 Australian Shepherds, so I have a larger breed dog. So I did definitely invest in a dog treadmill for my house, and then I also have one for my office. But yeah, I would definitely recommend trotting, and we will get into what you need to actually achieve the aerobic capacity of trotting. A sustained trot. So we'll get into that actually shortly, but great question.
Yeah, awesome question. So on that topic of kind of a healthy dog, we definitely want to look at the overall picture. We want to make sure that we have lots of balanced areas, including healthy and appropriate nutrition. And another one that we talk about a lot is a healthy weight. And I know that you and I on our other lives have gone over what a healthy weight looks like and how a pet owner can tell. Do you mind giving us a brief recap of that and how anybody watching might be able to determine if their dog is the right weight?
No, I can never get sick of actually discussing this because in general, keeping dogs at a lean, healthy body weight is crucial, but especially for these sports dogs because they have so much stress on their bodies and on their joints.
Yep.
And then I also know, and I can say this because I compete also in conformation, but a lot of times the crossover, some of the breeds in conformation, the ring prefers or the judges prefer the dogs to be a little more chubbier than they should be for some of our other sports. So this is something that I really can't stress enough to keep your dog at a healthy, lean body weight. And a quick, easy way to be able to tell that is from the top, looking at your dog downward, you should see an hourglass. So you should absolutely see a waistline. The front of the dog at the shoulders should be wider, and then it should come in as an hourglass at the waist, and back by the hip should back out. And then a quick, easy way to feel on your dog is and I'm holding my phone up, so I'll try to see if I can show you.
I can use my hand, Shari.
Oh, okay, perfect. So if Chelsea, hold up the back of your hand. Yep. And if you all can just gently, lightly rub your fingertips over your knuckles on the back of your hand. Okay, great. That's how your dog's ribs should feel when you lightly touch your dog's ribs. If you turn your hand over and you touch on the knuckles on the pad, that means that's how your dog's ribs feel. That means your dog has a little excess weight. And then if you make a fist and you rub your fingers over your knuckles again, and you can really feel those knuckles protruding. If your dog's ribs feel like that, then your dog actually gets some extra treats and dinner tonight because your dog is a little too thin.
Yep. And it's important to keep our dogs, especially our sport dogs, on the lean side, like you said, because there's so much impact that gets put on those joints. They're jumping, they're landing, they might be running and then sliding, and any extra weight they have on their body then results in more, stress in their limbs. So I'm glad that we talked about that. I too, it's something I talk about with all my clients over and over because it's so important, and it's something that we can do for them to help keep them healthy. So are there any other ways that you would evaluate how much stress is being put on the dog's system?
Actually, yes, there is a great way to calculate the stress on a dog's musculoskeletal system by calculating what I refer to as something similar to how we calculate our BMI, our body mass index.
Okay.
So you can calculate your dog's BMI with 2 pieces of information. What you need to know is your dog's height at their withers, which is where their shoulder blades meet on the top of their. So you need your dog's height in inches, and you need your dog's weight in pounds.
Okay.
So once you have those 2 pieces of information, weight and the height, then what you do is you divide the weight by height, and that number should equal 2.5 or less. That number, if it's 2.5 or less, that does give you a ratio that does show that the dog will have decreased stresses on their body.
Okay.
If it's lower, like 1.6, great. The lower, the better. If it starts getting over 2.5, then that is putting an increased stress on the dog's body.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. So my dog Finn that I compete with, he's an Australian Shepherd. He's 22 inches at the withers, weighs 54, 55 pounds. So if I divide 55 by 22, that actually equals 2.5. So I'm right there. So if I were to even put 2 extra pounds on him, he would now be 2.6.
Okay.
So now I'm starting to put extra stresses on his body, and it's just a 2-pound difference. So to me, it's really important. And I know for a fact, even just looking at him and feeling him, he is at his best body weight right at about 54, 55 pounds. So having that information can give you information about your dog. Now, hypothetically, if your dog maybe is heavy boned and that ratio is higher, and your dog is at a healthy lean body weight, so you say, oh gosh, well, I can't really get my dog any thinner to get that number lower, then you have to just start considering some things when you're training and competing, such as maybe when you're training agility, train at a lower jump height for some of those percentages of your practices, maybe even compete at a lower jump height. Make sure you're competing on good, compressible, non-skid surfaces. If you're jogging your dog or bike touring or doing any of those things, you want a good, forgiving, soft surface like a trail. So just knowing that information can give you information as far as what you may want to do when you're working, exercising, competing, practicing, and with your dog.
I love that. I love the fact that even if that number is not quite right, there are considerations that we can make in training and in competition that can help kind of change how much stress we might be putting on the dog's body. And I also love that this number can be flexible. So just because, if you guys do your calculations on your dogs today.
So get your calculators out and
go ahead and do it now.
Fun.
And so, but it doesn't have to be kind of stuck with that, especially now while we're at home with our dogs, spending so much time with them. It's a great time to go, ooh, that number's a little high. Ooh, my dog's got a few extra pounds. Let's go ahead and try to work on that now, because it's one thing that we can do to help our sports dog and even help our pet dogs during this kind of weird time, right? It gives us something to focus on, something positive to have a good impact with our pets. So I like that.
I've been asked in some of my conditioning seminars, and if any of you have ever attended any of my seminars, please comment, because I love to see who's actually watching Facebook Lives. But people have asked in a sense of, well, does it depend on the breed? Because I have a corgi, so it's a short-legged, long-back dog. No, because your dog's body weight should be in the correct ratio to your dog's height. So just because it's a shorter leg dog, it should still have that correct body weight and not carry excess weight on its shorter legged body.
And actually that's funny, because that's basically what Sarah Beth just asked. She said, does this calculation change for different body types of dogs? So that's good to know. We do have a nice question here from Ro. She says, my sport dog is considered a micro dog and her BMI comes out to 1.25. Is that too low?
And that's a question I've been asked at a seminar too. And actually I've met Ro's dog, and his little dog is adorable. But no, the number can never get too low. Just know, if anything, well, let me answer that question a little better. It can get too low if your dog is too thin. So again, with that fist, if you feel your dog's ribs and they're really sticking out, then yes, Ro, you're going to want to put a couple extra pounds on her. But if weight is good and your dog's BMI is low, then that's honestly, I would I would prefer that, because what you have knowledge on is that she's going to have a lot less stress on her body over time.
Mm-hmm.
It's when they start to get too high that we need to be concerned about. And
And
may need to make some alterations in your training.
right. And it sounds like we kind of use this number, this kind of canine BMI number, in conjunction with actually putting our hands on our dogs.
Correct.
Right.
So
It's not
don't
just
let
one or
that
the other, it's both of them together.
Exactly. Don't let that dictate your life, but have it as to me, it's a fun calculation, but it's also just a great piece of information to have, especially if your dog's number is too high. Because like I said, then making thoughtful choices is going to be even more important than Rose, little micro dog, who actually, if anything, is probably just this very light little thing on her feet, which actually she is. I've seen her, but you would be less concerned, Ro, versus if dog was 2.7, let's say.
Yeah. That makes sense. So in conjunction with our fitness training right now, we're kind of maybe staying inside a little bit more, having to do more social distancing. One other thing that I don't want you guys to forget about is your training component. So I compete with my dogs too, and I will tell you that we've certainly gone in the ring and come out going, well, we've got some stuff to work on. And a lot of the times, that's not necessarily a fitness or something fitness-wise that we need to address. It's behavior. And so I can tell you right now, I am taking time with my own personal dogs while we're kind of in this limbo, getting stuck at home. And I'm working or reworking on a lot of those important foundation skills. So I'm working on, cleaning up my sits and making them more square. I'm working on cleaning up my come front recall. I'm working on a lot of those, 2 on, 2 off, some of those really basic components that we all are going to need once we get back out there. So don't forget to kind of take advantage of this time. Think about your last couple opportunities you had in the ring, and maybe even the last year that you've had in the ring with your dog, and think to yourself, okay, what could I improve on? And then make a little list for yourself, and you can spend this time working on, addressing some of those training behaviors, some of those training components. And that would be a great use of your time. It would work your dog mentally. It would work them physically. Shari, you and I have talked about puppy push-ups and working on sit and stand repetitions. And when I'm working on my front recall and I'm working on my healing and auto sits, that incorporates a lot of those sit to stands, which is great for their body too. So by working on those training behaviors, you can also be working on their fitness at the same time.
Yeah, and Rosemary, I just saw her comment. You can never do too much foundation. It's always great to revisit it, but I love what you said, because number one, you're incorporating that into your fitness, but also, like you had mentioned about cleaning up your sits. So I know you and I, when we did the puppy Facebook Live, we talked about sloppy sits. Well, it's a little harder to help clean up sloppy sits and down. So those sits or downs where they're kind of off to a side.
Right.
But it's never too late. And it's so important to train those movements in a proper symmetrical pattern, because otherwise they are, for their life, overstressing one side and underutilizing the other side. So cleaning up those things now's a great time to start doing that and trying to perfect some of those normal movement patterns that they do every day in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of these normal things that we're going to do with our dogs, can you give us some examples? I know that there are a variety of sports that people are participating in. I know that here, just looking at this guest list, I know that we have people that do obedience. We have people that do dryland mushing, bike joring, canicross with their dogs. I see some scent work people, some agility people. So we do really have a wide variety of people.
Really, and dock diving person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Linda's concerned because her dog came out to 2.7, so Linda will chat about that. But what it means, as I mentioned, is that you just may have to, because I know you just kind of also started in agility. So just as I mentioned, those things about taking into consideration about not maybe always jumping him at his highest height, making sure it's good surfaces. So don't panic, but just know it's something that you're going to have to be mindful of.
Yeah.
But so to answer your question, what I would love to teach people today, and all of those who are watching, I'm so glad, I can't see how many are tuned in.
Looks like right now we've got 17 people watching.
All right, well, you 17 people are going to get some great pearls right now, because what I'm hoping to teach you today is what comprises a good, balanced fitness regimen, no matter what you compete in with your dog. And even if you don't compete or do an actual sport, it's actually just a good, well-rounded exercise program. Just like how if we didn't necessarily compete or play a sport, we would want a good program.
Right.
There's 5 categories. Everyone get your pen, paper out, or start, your notebook, because I imagine you're going to want to take notes. I'm giving you the heads up now. But there are 5 components that make up a good, balanced exercise fitness regimen. All 5 categories should be visited at least 3 days a week.
Okay.
The nice thing is a lot of the exercises and movements can cross over from one category to the next. So it's a great way to be efficient and save time. But category 1, number 1, aerobic. This is going to be steady, continuous endurance training.
Okay.
As I was talking about earlier, when Ro asked his question about trotting.
Yep.
In order to gain the aerobic capacity for that endurance training, the dog has to trot for a minimum of 20 minutes.
Okay.
You can also do something like swimming. However, the dog has to swim continuously for a minimum of 5 minutes. So not like how my dog likes to go get his toy, to get out, walk around the yard, maybe come back, maybe bring his toy back, maybe not. It has to be a continuous swimming. So what I do is I stand at the stairs, and as he's bringing the toy back, I grab it and ask him to drop it, and then I throw it again. So it's that continuous 5 minutes. A land treadmill, a water treadmill, biking, the golf cart I mentioned, biking, any of that, that's your aerobic capacity. So that's category 1.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're okay.
Getting a bit dry. Category 2 is your anaerobic. So what your anaerobic is your short bursts of speed. Now, this is especially important for agility. And yet, yes, people say, really, agility? Yes, because if you think about how long a dog has to run agility, it's like, what, all of 20 to 45 seconds in one burst. Your agility dogs, your fly ball dogs, your lure coursing dogs, your dock diving dogs, those are especially important that they need the anaerobic workout. Things like frisbee, ball retrieving, restrained recalls, short agility sequences, interval running, any of those are great for anaerobic.
Okay.
Number 3 is strengthening. It has absolutely been shown through studies that strength generates more power and is closely linked to speed. So those of you who want more speed on the agility course, the lure course, you need to make sure your dogs have good strength. The best way to strengthen, as Chelsea mentioned earlier, is through tricks and functional movements. But good movement patterns. So not those off to the side sits, not those sloppy downs. You want to make sure you're having good symmetrical movement patterns. But other things like you talked about, the puppy push-ups, crawling, wave or give paw, backing up, hill work, sidestepping, tugging, which tugging cross over to anaerobic.
Right.
I like to do what I call sit squats, where front legs are elevated and the dog sits and stands. So those are all really great ways to strengthen. And some of them can cross over. Your agility, rally dogs, fly ball dogs, dock diving dogs, conformation dogs, they definitely need more strength work versus endurance work. But your mushing dogs, for sure, your bike joring dogs, they definitely need to spend time in the aerobic category. Number 4, so we have so far aerobic, anaerobic, strength. Number 4 is flexibility. The length of the muscles and how long they can elongate, that's flexibility. And that is gained through stretching. Either passively, meaning you as the owner do it for the dog, or actively, where the dog does it, him or herself. Passive is not ideal to do prior to your workout or your competition, your event, because it has absolutely been shown through studies to increase risk of injury if you do passive stretching first. So you want to do your active stretching first, and then after, during your cool down, you can certainly do passive stretching if you want. Examples of stretching would be active stretching, would be cookie stretches, to the side, to the chest, straight up with the front legs elevated, doing things curling around your leg. So those would be your active ways to stretch. Versus passive, where you're taking the dog through the range of motion. Waving up high, bow is a great self stretch or just like push up. And then lastly, the 5th category is balance and proprioception. They both go hand in hand because you need to have proprioception, which is the brain's ability to know where the body is in space in order to have balance. So things that can help with balance, cavalettis, meaning where the dog's stepping over the poles or over tree branches, tree roots, walking in like a wooded area, walking over a ladder, backwards walking, sidestepping, pivot work, tugging, again, especially on an unstable surface. Or any work on any kind of unstable surface is going to help work balance and proprioception. So those are your 5 categories. They all need to be visited at least 3 days a week. Have a good balanced regimen. And again, like I said, some of them can, if you do bow, well, that's working strength and flexibility at the same time. You do cookie stretches, that's also working balance, strength, and flexibility all at the same time. So you've visited 3 categories just with those 2 exercises.
Now, kind of speaking on that, we've got a question from Ro again that says, would you consider canicross or bike joring to be strength conditioning?
Not really, and that would be equivalent to us jogging. Even if you're a distance jogger, you're not really target strengthening. If there's maybe a lot of hills involved, you might get some bit of strengthening work, but you're not really getting targeted strengthening. So your canicross and your bike joring is really going to reside more so in aerobic category. Great question.
Now, I've got a follow-up question for you.
Yeah,
Can we talk briefly about off days? Because I know that lots of us who have so much to do with our dogs, we will, we want to train everything. And so sometimes our dogs are not getting those true rest days. mentally and physically. So within an appropriate sports training and conditioning, how many off days do you give your dogs, or do you recommend that people take?
Yeah. And again, I'm so glad you did visit. That's such a great question because, you know, people can go one direction where they overtrain with their dogs, and then they go the other direction where they undertrain with their dogs, and both can
Our
set
problem.
dogs up for injury.
Right.
So it's important to walk the line and not cross one or the other. Dogs need off days just like people do. Recovery is actually just as important as those workouts. So you need to give your body recoveries. And so I always tell people a minimum of 1 to 2 a week of an off day. Now, if you love to do stuff with your dog, that doesn't mean you can't go for a walk with a dog.
Okay.
Or just allow it to free play in your backyard while you hang out with it.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Your dog is self-regulating and it's not pushing you and you're not pushing it.
Right.
But the muscles need to recover. I can tell you, my dog's actually thrilled. For those of you who don't live in Atlanta, Georgia, it stormed like crazy last night, and yesterday was yucky.
Yeah.
My dogs were so thrilled to do nothing but sleep yesterday because we had busy, busy days enjoying the gorgeous days prior.
Right.
What they were telling me, and my 3 dogs, I have 3 Aussies, they range from 7 months to 6.5. What they were saying to me is, oh, my body needed this.
Yeah.
And you know what? Mine did too. I don't even nap much, and I napped with them. So
Yeah.
it's important to give the dogs their off days just as important as it is to give them their off days. So make sure you're not overtraining them. The muscles won't have abilities to recover, especially if you have big workouts. So those of you who do, like, for example, the bike joring or like to go distance running with your dogs, or you had a big workout session the day before, maybe that next day is either off or just a nice light walk around the neighborhood.
Yeah. As a lot of you know, I do bike joring with my dogs, and we, this winter had a big competition where for 7 weeks straight, we were logging pretty significant miles, and the dogs were conditioned for it. But I'll tell you that when it was done, we all took a full week off, and it felt really good. And the dogs rested, which told me that they needed it. I think for some people, they can get in the habit of using exercise to get their dogs to rest. And so on those off days when their dog isn't getting the exercise, can then struggle a little bit with relaxation unless they're just completely wiped, completely exhausted. So in conjunction with your training plan, I do recommend that you guys teach behaviors like place or settle on a mat. Teach your dogs how to relax in a crate or how to relax in an X pen, so that on those days off, if they're not wanting to relax, you can help them. You can give them a cue, whether it's environmental like an X pen or a crate, or a verbal cue like settle or go place, and then use reinforcement to help keep them there. Because it's easy for us to become dependent on that exercise to tire our dogs out. And some days then it's really hard for us as pet owners to determine whether or not they need that break. So don't forget about your training component to help your dogs learn what that off switch looks like.
Yeah, and that's such a great thought. And on that thought, I want to also mention, like I briefly mentioned earlier, about an off season. So those of us who love to train and compete with our dogs, having an off season is also really important, meaning time away from your competition or your sport. And it needs to be, and I get a lot of times on occasion in my seminars, I get a couple of people who don't like me for this next comment. However, you're welcome for it. It needs to be a minimum of 30 days.
Yeah.
And when I say a minimum of 30 days away from your competition or sport. It means hypothetically, if you compete in agility, all agility equipment goes away. But think of all those fun foundation things you can go revisit or clean up, or you can still work on stuff like a star line or just stuff on flat, like rear crosses, front crosses,
Right.
Things like that, but no equipment.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't mean on day 31 is a competition.
Right. Pull it all out and go hardcore.
And we go hardcore. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And as we, have our muscles not trained for it, or our joints or body not trained for it again.
Yeah.
Dogs who've competed in a sport for however long, you don't need to reteach them how to weave or go over a jump. It's not a matter of building them back up to that. What it is taking a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks once the off season is over to reintroduce those forces and movements that are required of them for that specific sport. So whether it's dock diving, agility, any type of fly ball, any of those sports that require especially high speed movements, frisbee, any of those, you need to gradually work your dog back up to that specific sport.
Yeah. Yep. And we've got a nice question here from Sarah Beth while we're on this topic of off days. She says, on these off days, is it okay to continue with mealtime enrichment and foundation training, or is it best to be a full day off from activity? And I would say that it's good to have both. So there are certainly off days in our household where we just completely rest. The dogs aren't telling me that they need food enrichment. They aren't telling me that they need a nice long walk. And so when they communicate that to me, I will take a full day off and we will just relax. Like you said, Shari, we might go out in the backyard and sit on the deck and let them walk around and sniff. And if they want a free play, they can. There are other days where my dogs on our off days, let's say we have 2 off days in a row, they'll start to get a little antsy. And so on those days, I can tell that they need a little bit more from me. And I will offer them, breakfast or dinner in a snuffle mat or a food puzzle to let them roll around on the ground. And that enrichment then is still very low impact for them. It's not creating any additional stresses on their body, but it is still allowing that mental enrichment to help tire the dog out and help keep them relaxed. Is that what you would recommend as well, Shari?
100%. You said it for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, because I definitely believe that dogs need mental days and physical days, just like us. It's just like us. There are some days, and I think, again, if you have taught a dog to go, 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 go and never to settle, then good luck on those days off.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be struggling.
Yeah.
But if you train your dog, and it's never too late, I imagine, see, it's never too late to teach a dog to settle. But if you teach your dog to settle, then it is so important to sometimes just have a day off from everything. And that's what I did yesterday. I've been go, 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 physically, mentally, emotionally, with everything. And yesterday I woke up and I said, I'm going to be so productive today. And then I thought, no, you know what? I'm taking the day off.
Yeah.
From all. And we all did. And dogs were happy for it. I was happy for it. And I was refreshed today and ready to go. So, Sarah Beth, it's a great question. But I think sometimes, yes. Sometimes give them a full day off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw Eileen actually had a great question about the rib, feeling the rib. I have Aussies too. Chelsea has big hairy coated Malamutes as well.
Yeah.
So what you do is you get through the coat. You just work your way in through the coat very gently. And then you should be able to be on those ribs, and you just roll your fingertips back and forth, and you should then be able to. If you're still struggling, then I would venture to bet maybe a couple pounds less.
Yeah.
But you should be able to get through that hair.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I've got double coated breeds, in the winter when they've got lots of hair, you'll look at them and they look 15 pounds heavier than they are. But when you put your hands on them, you can still tell that they're fit. So you want to make sure that you go through that coat to feel the dog. And if you can't feel the dog, then it probably means we're a little bit too heavy.
Yeah. And, our canine athletes go out there and give us their all.
Yeah.
For us. And we're asking them to do that. And yes, do most of them love it? Absolutely. But what we need to do in return,
Whatever we can.
for what they're giving us,
Yep.
is to help their bodies be able to adapt to these incredible movements at such high speeds. And the way to do that is to give them that support on their joints, on muscles, and not just show up at the event with little to no fitness behind that event.
Right.
It would be like us going and competing in some crazy sport that we have never done any training or fitness for. No athlete, no football player, baseball player, tennis player, no athlete just shows up to their competition without that fitness behind them.
Yeah. We've got a really nice question here that I'd like to address from Alex. So a lot of people watching participate in multiple sports, me included, you included. So these 30 days off that you're recommending, does this mean 30 days all at once for everything? Or would it mean I could have 30 days off in the summer from mushing and then my 30 days off from agility is in November? Can it change like that, or should it all overlap to 1 month completely free?
Alex, you win, because I've never been asked this question before, but it's such a great one, especially like us. We both compete in multiple venues, and so the answer to that is no. It absolutely doesn't have to be 30 days from all of them at the exact same time. It's nice if you do compete in things that are different seasons. So, for example, dock diving tends to be more in the summer, which is nice because, especially when I lived in Florida, that was off season from agility because it was just too darn hot. So I was able to take that off season from agility in the summer while competing dock diving. If you're keeping your dog fit throughout the year, they can transfer from one sport to the next, especially if you're doing some sport specific fitness. So just knowing, okay, well, my dog competes in this sport, and this sport, what movements are important for them to be able to do and what muscles need to be strong and flexible, making sure you're doing those fitness regimens. But you can absolutely do your 30 days off from each thing at totally different times. You just have to remember to keep track of that, of when you've done what. But yeah, that's a great question.
That is a really great question. I like that one a lot. And I think the other thing that I really liked about what you just said was that with all these sports that we do, there is a lot of overlap, but there's also a lot of isolation. And so it's important to remember that as you're taking a break from one activity, you might still be getting all the conditioning and fitness you need from your other activities and your other training plans. But there also might be some movements or some muscle groups that are specific to that one activity that you would then want to be very mindful of as you start jumping back into your activity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dock diving and agility, I compete both, and there are certainly things that overlap. But my dog only running straight and jumping up and forward in dock diving. But in agility, there's a lot of other movements and components and pieces of equipment. So there are other things I would need to do. Same with frisbee, a lot of different turning, twisting, jumping, different directions, landing. So you just make sure you're training for each sport. And the nice thing, if you are let's say, making this up, let's say you take June off from SAR and I don't know, November off from dock diving agility, you want to cross train for the others possibly, while you're in your off season for the other. So that's
Right.
a nice time to maybe try to do that. The other thing to remember is prevention is always easier to prevent injuries.
Mhm.
It's so much easier and so much better than curative medicine. First off, we never want to see our dogs hurt, but it's never fun, and the recovery isn't fun. But the other thing I want you all to know is that the number one reason for injury is history of a previous injury.
Yeah.
It increases the risk of injury by 100 times.
Oh my goodness.
I said that correctly. You are increasing your dog's injury risk by 100 times if they have a previous injury, and it's not necessarily to the same area. And the reason for that is from compensatory movement patterns, which is why
Yeah.
if your dog has gotten injured, you want to make sure it is being addressed with a good rehab professional.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And it's always better with everything, you know, fitness, conditioning, rehab, training. The sooner you can see a professional and start addressing it, the better.
Yes, absolutely. And if you start working your dog through fitness and learn dog's normal movement patterns, how they look when they walk, how they look when they get up from sitting, how they look when they're trotting, how they look when they're, going downstairs, all these things, it is going to be so much easier for you to pick up something very subtle
Right.
when something goes wrong. And that's better than waiting until your dog's full on limping or really in pain. If you
Yeah.
can catch something when it's very soon and subtle because you think, that just didn't look like his normal.
Right.
And
Right.
and listen to your gut instinct, because I have so many clients who say to me, it just didn't look right. Am I crazy to have brought him to you? And I go over the dog and I say, no, you are not crazy. I found this, this, and this, but it's a good thing we caught it now and early because your dog's going. And your dog's good. Your dog isn't really injured yet. It just was a little sore or had a little thing here.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. One more question for you. So I know that with our sports dogs, especially those of us who compete, we're very used to warm up and cool down exercises, kind of in conjunction with or in association with the competition. So even for confirmation, before I would go in the ring with him, I would take him outside and we would, yes, let him sniff and potty and kind of do his business, but we would also warm him up on gating so that we had nice reach and drive in the ring. And that was part of our warm-up routine that we did. And of course, you have the same for agility, where you're making sure that you're getting the dogs out and getting them warmed up to some of those motions that they're going to need when they're in the ring. Now that we're kind of at home, we're a little bit more stationary. If people are going to be working on their at-home fitness or even doing exercise with their dogs in the backyard, even if it's low impact, do you still recommend warm up and cool down exercises? And does it change at all based on what you recommend for competition?
That's such a great question. First, I'm still kind of stuck on that you actually warm your dog up for confirmation, because I always felt like I was the only one who did that.
Yeah.
But dogs for confirmation should be warmed up. Absolutely. They go from their crate and getting trimmed and scissored to the ring. You want them to gait beautifully, but
they're
I don't necessarily gait. I've been sitting on the couch for an hour or two. So
Yeah.
I thank you. I'm glad you do that. I always thought I was the only one who did that. But to answer your question now, that depends on what you're actually going to be doing and the level of effort that is going to be required of the dog. So as I mentioned earlier, things like frisbee, or if you're doing some little agility sequences in your backyard and the dog's going to be pretty much going all out, then yes, you need a warm up. If you're going for a jog or a hike, and maybe just a brief walk for a couple of minutes is sufficient. For the strength and balance work that I had mentioned earlier with those components,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like our dogs are going to the gym and they're trying to work out their 1 rep maximum weightlifting kind of thing, and their
Yeah.
muscles are going all out right from the beginning. So actually, a lot of times the actual conditioning exercise or fitness exercises themselves can be used as part of the warm up. So I do conditioning with my dog Finn. I'll start. I don't necessarily go out and him or jog him for 5 minutes. What we'll do is I will start with some of my easier movements that I want to do with him,
Okay.
and just get his muscles, get the blood flowing to the muscles. And then I work up to my harder ones. So
Okay, so you'll kind of let some of your exercises be a warm up for others.
correct. And then I tend to try to end my workout session with stretching. So I will usually do things like bow cookie stretches, pop, reaching to the ceiling type of exercises. I usually will end with those.
Okay.
And I will utilize his exercises as his warm up.
Okay.
So, you're not, like I said, you're not be going all out with those. Most of the time you're doing repetitions, and like us, we pack on the weights onto the weight machine or the bar, and so
Mhm.
you lie down on the bench and you're going to be lifting a bunch of weight. You could injure yourself without a good warm up.
Right.
Dogs aren't lifting weights. Their biceps, the heaviest thing they have to lift is their arm. So if they're doing an activity, maybe sitting on the disc, then you want to do a couple of sits on the flat first, make sure that's
Okay.
warmed up, dog's moving well, and then translate it to harder movements or harder equipment, if that's going to be your progression. But usually they don't need a warm up for just that, balance, strength type of work.
Okay. We've got one last question here that we're going to address. Another question from Ro. This has not been brought up, but is it worth it to get x-ray films on non-breeding prospects for hips and elbows? My dog was a 7-week stay from the Humane Society, and everything I've read suggests that she is at a higher risk for joint and hip issues.
Oh my God. No, you should attend all of my lives because you always ask really great questions. Bye, Alex. I see you had to leave. The answer to that is yes. I, in general, recommend anyone who is competing in performance events, especially performance events that do require a lot of pounding on the joints, a lot of stress on the joints. And Ro competes in frisbee with his little adorable dog. So that is a high impact sport. I always recommend anyone who's competing in any kind of high impact sports to get hips and elbows x-rayed anyways as a baseline.
Right.
Because if you never get it done and then at 5 years of age you get it done and something shows up, well, but how do you know it hasn't been there for years?
Right.
Because it's now just kind of starting. So it's always good to get a baseline, but especially, you are correct, Ro, that early spay and neuters have absolutely been linked to some health issues, including some joint and hip issues, increased risk of cruciate disease, some cancers, things like that. But I also had a rescue, passed away a couple years ago, but I had no control over her getting spayed at 3 months of age. But I made sure to get baseline hip and elbow x-rays, especially if you have a dog that had to have an early spay or neuter. And when I say early, I mean before the age of 1 year, because hormones are still building and growing in the dog. So if you can, I know that's a different Facebook Live we can do, but
Yeah.
yes, if you have a dog that has an early spay or neuter, especially that young, I would strongly recommend getting that baseline. You will thank yourself for spending that little extra money down
Yeah.
the road.
Yeah. I love what you brought up about, knowing what your baseline is, because then even if something does pop up later, it would give you insight as to whether or not it was acute or chronic. And then that would give you more information to help you better understand how to kind of treat the problem. Linda, we're gonna answer this one too, because it's kind of along the same lines.
Yes.
My dog is almost 4. Is it too late to get the baseline?
I would not say it's too late. I absolutely get them. I mean, it's never too late. You know, at 8 years old, it's no longer really considered a baseline anymore, but it's just
Right.
always good to have. The sooner you can get them, the better. But at 4 years of age, I know Linda's just starting out in agility. She has also done some duck diving for a little bit. So you're welcome, Ro. Thanks for watching. So especially because you are now just starting to get into agility, so the forces are going to be compounding, I would do it now before your dog, especially knowing now that your dog was a 2.7 BMI. So now we know we have an increased musculoskeletal risk. So based on that, I would get those x-rays and have that information for later.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. Great questions, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. We apologize for our slight technical difficulties that we've been having, but we do appreciate you all for tuning in and asking such wonderful questions, because if you have the question, chances are somebody else who watches this is also going to have the question. You're not alone when you guys are wondering these things. So it's important to ask, because we're all here learning together. So Shari, I know that services right now for you are changing a little bit. You know, we are under a shelter in place here in Georgia, but I do know that you offer virtual consults for people even out of the state. So how could you give some people assistance with their sports dogs, even if you would be unable to see them in person?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if people live locally, I am still doing office visits on a limited hours and days. But if you can't get to my office for whatever reason, and this really goes for anywhere around the globe, because I have been doing distance consulting for canine athletes for many years. This is just kind of had to force my hand in the way of learning the latest technology.
Yeah.
So I am now also able to do things much more live, literally, through things like Zoom and Facebook chats and things like that. So I am offering virtual consults. I have one tomorrow, actually, in Florida.
Nice.
Yes. So if anybody is interested in doing any kind of consult with me, and they either do not live locally or they do not want to go out for obvious reasons, then they certainly can contact me through my website, which is PUP, P-U-P, Rehab, G-A, PUPREHABGA.com. And we can certainly set up something virtually, or you can certainly always reach me through Facebook Messenger.
Yep.
That's always an easy way. So yes, anyone who wants to reach me certainly can for any kind of canine athletic consult.
And we will list, after this ends, we'll comment in the comments under this. We'll provide Shari's website. So if you guys do need to reach out to her, we'll make it easy for you. For those of you who are watching, when we were talking about our off days, our rest days, if your dog does not know how to settle, if your dog is not used to being in a crate or an X-pen, or if you want to learn more about different enrichment items that we recommend, we do have a Positive Futures YouTube channel, and all of those videos that I just named are actually public, so you can access those for free. We do have some paid for videos on there as well, but all of those are free. So if you guys need to learn how to do any of those behaviors or want to learn about some DIY enrichment so you don't have to spend any extra money right now, or some of the products that we recommend, all of that is available on our YouTube channel. Shari, as always, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you
It
so
was
much
a
for
pleasure
joining us.
speaking with you and having everyone tune in. Thank you.
Yes, we had some fabulous questions. We really appreciate it. If there is anything else related to fitness, old, young, sports dogs training that you guys want to hear more about, drop it in the comments below, because we are trying to provide you guys during this pandemic a little bit more free information. Everybody's stressed out. Everybody needs to learn some good things, and we want to be able to help provide that for you. So if there are more things that you guys would like to hear about, please reach out to us either publicly or privately so that we can help continue to bring you guys content that you want and that will benefit you.
And I also appreciate everybody being patient with me while I did this on my phone.
Yeah, we'll continue to troubleshoot that so that if the internet is lagging because everybody is on it, we'll try to troubleshoot so that that'll be easier for you too next time. Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Shari, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it, and we hope that everybody has a wonderful evening. All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.